Okay, we are live. Okay.
There we are.
There we are. Right. Okay. So I know Ashley already told me she was here. So yes, here she is. Ah. So yes, hello to everybody that's joining. And today on Confidence Journeys, I'm talking to Dr. Deborah. Is it Vinall?
We go with Vinall.
Vinall.
I believe traditionally it was Vine Hall, like a wine hall in
Okay.
Montreal. It's an inherited name. It's not mine, so I don't really
Okay.
mind. I go with Vinall.
Well, my maiden name was Vernal, so very similar.
Oh, okay.
Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
springtime vernal equinox, but we had two L's.
Oh, that's
That was a long time ago.
yeah. Well, my maiden name is Vis, which is the Dutch word for fish. So I feel like I've traded up by going to a wine hall. I'm a,
Yeah, much better. Yeah. Oh, bless. Okay, so yeah, it's lovely to be here with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
And
you.
I know lots of people are excited to hear from you. And I'll just mention that Deborah before did a really good live with Dr. Bronze Rice. So if you haven't seen that yet, go and watch it. Not now, but after this, go and watch it because it's really good. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know you already, do you want to just introduce yourself and say a little bit about you?
Sure, yeah. Um, well, I'm Dr. Deborah Vinall. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and doctor of psychology. I practice in Southern California, just outside of Los Angeles. I'm originally from Canada, and my heart is still there in many ways. And I specialize in working with trauma. I'm also the author of two books. The first is Gaslighting, a step-by-step recovery guide to heal from emotional abuse and build healthy relationships. And the second is a trauma recovery workbook for teens.
Mm. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, emotional abuse, I can relate to that so much. Having gone through three horrible relationships, before now meeting my now husband. We've been married 27 years this year. So everything's fine now. Everything's fine now. Yeah. And trauma, there's a little bit of trauma going on in my family at the moment, but I don't want to talk about it too much because it's to do with my very young grandson and what's going on with him. But yeah, so it's lovely for you to be here. So, what actually reading your little bio, your description, what I loved was the magic of misfits and the badassery of black sheep that you also talk about. I love that because I think sometimes, especially where you're neurodivergent or you've got something different about you, you are labeled. And I like the fact that why can't we just be different? Why do we have to have this label that says you're this or you're that? Why can't we just be who we are? Because I think once you give somebody a label, they then buy into it and they live to that label. And I would, if I was in charge, I'd ban all labeling and I'd just say, okay, people are different. End of.
Yeah, despite being a therapist where we're kind of given that job of diagnosing, I've always been very averse to labels as well. And I think there's an interesting trend happening now, especially with some in the younger generation of really holding on to labels as an identity piece, especially like mental health diagnoses, self-diagnosing through TikTok and other dangerous practices, and then saying, okay, well, this is who I am. And like I said, I work in trauma. So a lot of like, well, I have PTSD and therefore this is why, which can be explanatory and can be helpful, but that becomes an end point. And really it should be a beginning, like understanding yourself as a beginning so that um, steps for how you can heal, how you can overcome the struggles in your life, whether that's with autism or PTSD or depression or social anxiety, which maybe relates a bit to what we're talking about. So
Mm.
self-understanding in order to grow and blossom.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really. I mean, it is important to know why you feel the way you feel, especially if you're like my nephew wouldn't mind me saying he's been diagnosed with ADHD and he takes medication for it. But a lot of his behaviour in his teenage years were really explained by the ADHD, why he was acting the way he did and where all his little compulsions came from. But now he knows that's how he is, and I wouldn't say he's labelled himself, but he does. he understands himself better. And I think that's a much better way than to deal with it than, you know, I mean, some people I think use it as an excuse. Well, I can't do this because I'm ADHD or I'm this, that, or the other. And I don't think it should necessarily stop anybody doing anything, but it might mean that they need help to do it or need to look at a different way of doing things. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think, it comes back even to the focus of your platform here as far as confidence is when you can understand yourself. Maybe sometimes a diagnosis helps to be a part of that, to create some self-compassion, some understanding of like, I struggle more here, not because I'm deficit in some way, but because my brain is wired a little bit differently. And so I'm going to give myself more grace and more compassion. And that can be part of a process of building self-love. And from that, some confidence can flourish.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that people are more depressed, more suffering with traumas, more like neurodivergency these days, or is it just that we tend to notice it more?
That's a great question. We discussed a lot, especially around neurodivergence, because obviously the rates have gone way up, and I know that's a big topic, especially in the United States with RFK Jr. bringing up, well, we got to change the diets and things like that, which are, unhealthy for sure. But it's not so much that we've had necessarily an increase in the number of neurodivergent people per se, but that we've drastically changed the diagnostic criteria, even throughout the time that I've been a practicing clinician. And even throughout my own teenager's lifespan, it's been different. And that creates a wider net to capture, or it sounds very, capture sounds like a bad word, but to hold people in, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where some people maybe were missed before. And also we've collapsed down two diagnoses or actually several diagnoses into the autism spectrum label. There was, autism disorder, and there was Asperger's disorder,
Yeah.
and Rett's disorder and childhood disintegrative disorder, where there's like development and then regression. All these different childhood developmental things that have been kind of seen to have commonality. So they were collapsed under one umbrella. Well, that obviously makes that umbrella explode in size. And so we're like, well, look at all the autism. Something must be wrong. And that, of course, is a really problematic discussion and label to be having around neurodivergence because there's so many really, truly brilliant, deeply sensitive, autistic people who are saying, wait, so now I'm a problem? Like, my difference is a disorder to be fixed. It's a disease to be eradicated. Are you trying to eradicate me? Like that becomes really problematic as well. So we also have to hold space for the fact that there are vulnerabilities and more suffering that can come along with different neurotypes. But that doesn't make the divergence itself a disease or a problem to be solved.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So changing the subject a little bit then, because we are here to talk about confidence. It's just I find trauma and all that so interesting. So can I just pick up Ashley's message? Yeah. So Ashley says, I've been traumatized since I was 2 years old with PTSD, OCD, epilepsy, bipolar disorder, mania, deep depressant, rapid cycling, but she ends at but. Yeah, that's a lot of problems, Ashley. So I hope you're okay. I do feel for you. Confidence then. So what would you say your confidence was like when you were young?
Not very high. Yeah. I think I was kind of a awkward child. I was kind of that smart kid too, who was like, "Ooh, I've got the answer, I got the answer," which is never really that popular of a move. And other kids would say that you've got. They called me the walking encyclopedia because I read a lot, and so I just naturally had this larger vocabulary. And people would tease that, so I learned to make myself smaller and to simplify so that I could try to fit in. And then I think that's such a hazard, right, of making yourself small. But as I was reflecting on this too, just thinking about our upcoming conversation, I think, a really big part of low confidence in childhood has to do with the environment. And so that can be both school and both home. And home, I think, is even bigger because it forms us before we even get to the school years. And my home environment was not supportive or kind or soft home environment at all. So you go into school with that kind of that sensitivity that's maybe heightened by not having that confidence of I'm lovable, I'm loved. That when you expect that from others, you're more likely to gravitationally pull it in. And when you expect rejection, you're kind of looking for it everywhere. There's always those kids who see that and they seize on it, and that becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think all of those factors were at play in my childhood as far as my confidence level in the school years.
Yeah, yeah, and I was exactly the same. I mean, my childhood, my parents were loving. They gave us as much as they possibly could. They didn't have a lot of money, but because they were brought up in the war years, that's the explanation I'm given anyway. They were brought up in the war years. They didn't really show any emotion. They were very emotionless. Um, and my mum, I've said this before, my mum suffered from depression. Looking back now, I think she suffered from postnatal depression after my younger brother was born, because when my mum was pregnant with my brother, her mother, my grandmother, died when she was about 4 months pregnant. And then she had my brother when she was 6 months pregnant. So 50 odd years ago, he was 3 months premature, which was a big deal then. They didn't think he'd live the night, but he did. And he's absolutely fine. But I think that took its toll. And after that, she was never the same. I was only 8, but look, so I didn't really know any different, except that my mum then stopped singing and was always in a bad mood. That's just the thing I remember. Um, she was always telling us that she wished she hadn't had us, and if we weren't there, her life would be better. So my childhood wasn't great, um, and that led me. I was quiet anyway. I was very quiet. I was the kind of girl that hung on to her mum's skirts, all the time, didn't want to talk to anybody. And so when my mum decided she didn't want to talk to me either, that really, set me off. So that led me into bad relationships because, of course, I was looking for love. Oh, don't be sorry, Ashley. I'm all right now. Um, yeah, that led me into bad relationships, 3 bad relationships. I mean, lots of them, but 3 proper relationships, which were abusive. And I got to the point where I had no confidence left whatsoever. So by this time, I was about 38. And I just thought, gosh, what am I going to do now after my last marriage ended? And I thought, I either carry on as I am because I'm in this loop clearly, so I'm going to keep going round and round in this loop and never find happiness, or I break it and I get up and I, you know, pull courage from somewhere, and move forward. So that's what I did. So since then I've been building my confidence, and now I'm absolutely fine. And I can look back on the past now and think, I don't know why I didn't, why was I so shy? The world is nothing to be scared of. And I also, um, I'm so proud of myself, I have to say, of what I've achieved in all this time.
Oh.
So what about you then? After your teenage years, then what happened next? So how did
Yeah,
your
well,
confidence develop? Because obviously in the job you're doing, you must be confident, in order to do it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like your title. Like, these are journeys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think going into in my teen years, I started to get attention from boys, probably similar to your experience, and I think that's an interesting thing because it creates only a certain layer of confidence. Like there's a confidence in self presentation of like, okay, well, people like how I look, or I can get attention, or that kind of thing. But there's a deeper confidence that confidence that you value, that you're valuable, that you matter as a person, that doesn't touch, you know? Um, so it's like these little layers. So there was that, but it just the sense of, but am I actually worthy just because some guy wants me or likes my body?
Mm.
That felt very, very separate. And so I worked in so many different ways to be perfect enough to be loved, right? I tried to be pretty enough, and put on my makeup just right.
Yeah.
Um, and try to get the right clothes. clothes was hard until I became a teenager and got a job because our family was we were poor too, and I never had new clothes. They were for like a full decade old because it was like several generations of hand-me-downs. And so like people are wearing neon colored spandex and I'm wearing bell bottoms. Like it was just not good. So I finally, when I was 14, I got a job and started building clothes and putting on makeup that I also bought because my mom was not into that and trying to be presentation. Working so hard in school to try to be, get the top grades. And so I was like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to change my life. And in everything I did, just trying to be perfect. And that was just so much pressure. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. Cities of we're not striving to be good, we're striving to be perfect, which is impossible and such a burden. Um, and I think that I got to a point where I recognized that I was good at a lot of things. And I don't say that like to brag, but just reflecting that was my mind was like, yeah, I'm succeeding and I feel so worthless. Like none of it matters because I fundamentally don't feel lovable. Wow. So there's a separate thing there. And I think it goes back down to those childhood messages. Like you said, your mom was saying, like, my life would have been better if I didn't have you. And I got like the same message, like you're what's wrong with the family, you're a mistake. And those messages you get when you're young are deeply ingrained. They're like wired in neurologically. And they're so hard to just overcome as adults by saying, well, that was me. But that's really the work of it. It really does come back to noticing where did this sense that I'm not lovable or worthwhile come from? What is it that holds me back from walking through the world with my head held high? And not even just posturally, because I think I learned how to just do that, but inside feeling like I'm allowed to show up. Going back to those messages as the compassionate adult that you are. And so I found myself, going through school and then getting degrees and all these things to put on the wall to prove that I'm somebody that still isn't really fitting. And I'm sitting with clients and I'm helping them, but there's still this piece that I'm like, I need to work on me. And so there's this compassionate adult part. And for me also, became a mother and some people do and some people don't. And learning to love my child and recognizing these are not ways that I was loved and do I love him in ways that maybe I can learn to love myself.
Yeah.
And so then there's a lot of talk about like loving the inner child, but like that's such an abstract concept. And so I just kind of like, what can that look like is to go back to some of those hurts, some of those traumas. Ashley said, she's had trauma since she was 2 years old. Whether these are words, which can be so wounding, or physical acts against our bodies. Going back in your imagination to that little child, picturing that little you, thinking about how big you were, how small, because sometimes, our mind is with us all the time. And so we can judge our past through our adult self, but thinking like, you were this tall, you were this little vulnerable thing. Picture that child, maybe find somebody in real life that you can look at and think, I was that child, whether it's somebody in your family, like a niece or a child that you run into at the coffee shop. And that little 6-year-old or 2-year-old or baby or 10-year-old. Imagine if somebody said that to her or did that thing to her or him. I'm sorry, I'm being very gendered here. And then maybe, even closing your eyes and in your heart, speaking to that little you that you still carry around inside of you. If you didn't carry her or him inside of you, you wouldn't still be hurting or reeling from these lessons, these malfunction lessons. And telling that little child what they needed to hear. You do belong. There's a purpose to your life. There's a reason you were born. You matter. Whatever. You never deserve to have that thing happen to you. They never should have touched you. Whatever it was, bringing those messages to your little child. And it's not some miracle, but doing that again and again can be a radical difference in learning to love yourself. And when you love yourself, that's the root of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. I go back to the young girl who used to cry herself to sleep because she was so lonely and so felt so unloved. Despite having friends, she just felt that she felt she wasn't worth loving, basically. So I just go back to her and I just stroke her hair as she's lying in bed crying and just tell her everything's going to be okay. That's all I really know how to do. I can't. It's very difficult. What like to go back and say, well, everything. You can't really go back and say you're going to have to go through all this shit. I'm sorry, but it'll turn out all right in the end. I don't want to tell her that. I just tell her like, don't cry. Everything's okay. You are loved. I love you, and I'm here with you. So that's what I say. Because I wouldn't want anything to change for a start. Because if anything changed, if she made any other decisions, I wouldn't be where I am now. Maybe I'd be in a better place. Maybe I'd be in a different place, but I'm happy where I am. So I don't want it to change. So it's very difficult. I mean, the last live I did with Malik, he said, if you could go back to your 16-year-old self, what would you say to her? And I said, I honestly don't know. I don't know what I'd say because he said, what advice would you give her? I said, I don't know what advice I'd give her because I don't want her to do anything different and I don't want her to know what's coming either. So I probably would not say anything. I'd just comfort her. So
Yeah.
I would find that quite a strange question, but lots of people ask it.
Yeah, I've been thinking
And
about that before.
go on. Yeah, sorry.
But when people say, like, if you could change, what's your biggest regret? That you would change?
Yeah, what would you
What
change?
would I do? Because there's so much pain, but I love where my life is today. So,
Exactly. When we have to go through that, we go through the pain because it's part of life. We don't have a choice, really. Um,
and maybe that's the message for somebody who maybe is in the middle of that really hard darkness right now is allowing yourself to believe that there can be something beautiful ahead and that this is just part of the path on the way there, that you have to go through some really rocky, rough terrain,
yeah.
but there will be beauty and joy and happiness ahead on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah. Just going back, Ashley asked a question a few minutes ago. She said to you, she asked you, should she finish going to therapy after 40 years? Now, I suspect you can't really answer that because you don't know her situation.
Well, if I'm understanding, it sounds like it's maybe been 40 years either since the trauma or since she's been in therapy last, probably since the trauma. Yeah, absolutely. I work with people often who are dealing with things that maybe sometimes they haven't even spoken of, they've even mentioned it to a soul happened 30, 40 years ago, and it can be transformed. The pain can be transformed and healed, and the traumas can really change shape. I recommend for trauma, specifically look for you want to look for a neurobiologically based therapy, not just talk therapy. So looking for somebody maybe who does EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, brain spotting, somatic therapy, something that goes beyond just talking about what happened, because you've probably been doing that. Well, some people have never spoken of what happened, but some people do, and it doesn't seem to change it. What we want to do is get into the parts of the brain where the trauma is stored, which is really those feeling parts. So hold on one second. So real quick brain lesson. So here's a brain. We have one laying around.
It's a brain I just happen to have.
That's exactly. We're going to hold on the screen. Okay. So there we go. So this orange part, it's all backwards to me. This is your prefrontal cortex. That's your thinking logical part. And this is what we're really tapping into when we're talking and thinking about what happened. But we want to go deep into the midbrain, in the just the inside of your brain. This is the limbic system. This tiny little dot, there it is the amygdala. So the amygdala is your fight, flight, freeze. That's what's happening when you're in trauma. Okay, and the limbic system is all those emotions. It's right in the middle. So it's what we call the reptilian brain, the animal brain, because it's the core that's formed in all creatures. And this logical part on the outside isn't. Not all creatures have all that. But trauma is it's so emotional, right? And so we want to get to a therapy that's activating that emotional part, because you can't heal one part of the brain by using another part very well. You need to bring it all together. So EMDR and brain spotting somatic therapy that really tap into the emotions and the feelings in your body where it's stored are really powerful for healing trauma. My short commercial.
Brilliant. Yeah. It's brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. Because when I was very depressed, I thought about going to a therapist. I mean, there wasn't any, mental health wasn't a big thing back in, what would that be? 1980 wasn't a big thing really. You were just supposed to grit your teeth and bear it sort of thing. So I thought about going to a counsellor, and then I thought, well, I don't want people to ask me, because I think at that point I was feeling shame and guilt. So I didn't want people to ask me to explain what was wrong, because I didn't want to talk about it, which is why I dealt with it on my own. And it took years, but I got through it. But yeah, so talk therapy, it can't work for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes it's really difficult.
And sometimes, there's a lot of value there as well, having somebody just to unspool your thoughts with, to talk through things. You can learn a lot of skills that can be helpful for dealing with anxiety and depression. But when it's trauma specifically, it's really helpful if you can find somebody to go beneath the surface as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to disparage talk therapy either. There's a lot of value there as well.
Yeah. I guess you have to find what works for you, don't you? I guess.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you've been trying one modality and you feel stuck, try something different.
Yeah. Ashley says journaling and writing was powerful. Yeah, I think that's what helped for me. Now that's interesting, because when I was in my last marriage, or the marriage before this one, um, the toxic one that ended, my friend said to me, start journaling. Well, basically what she said was, start writing things down. So write down what he does, what he says, because if you ever have to go to court, you've got your proof there. So, which was very sensible, but I never needed it. But just writing things down, I found, was helping me. And again, journaling wasn't a thing then, but just writing, I did find that helpful. And then I started meditating, and that was even more helpful. So journaling, yeah, I still journal now from time to time, and I meditate every day. I kind of replaced the journaling with meditating now.
Mhm.
But yeah, they both work, and very, very powerful.
They absolutely are really important parts of helping your mental health. And I think one thing that's neat about meditating is, there's so many different kinds of meditation. But one of the things that we sometimes learn in meditation is to tune into our body, right? To get out of our head and whatever's going on around us, all the distractions, but to really feel into your body and notice what's there and notice the feeling of your breathing. And when we do that, that itself, to come back to our theme, can build confidence in yourself, in your body, as a resource to sustain you. Even that just your own breath, which you carry with you everywhere you go, is a resource you can use to help calm you in times of anxiety at any point.
Mm.
The signals your body is giving you.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Because when you breathe slowly, you're basically telling your body that everything's okay. Because if you really were in danger, you're not going to be standing there breathing slowly. You're going to be breathing from the chest and getting ready to run or fight. So yeah, that slow breath is just telling your nervous system, actually, we're okay. And so therefore it will calm you down.
Absolutely. That's a very good explanation of why that's so
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said earlier about, when I said about you need confidence for your job, and you said, well, it's a title. I found that as well, because when I worked in retail banking for 42 years. So it was customer facing. So I did all sorts of different jobs, but always working with customers. And that, I think, gave me confidence while I was at work. So while I was at work and I knew my job, I was very confident. It was when I had to go to social events, and when I had to, talk to people I didn't know. Well, even family events, I always found very, very stressful. I've actually just come back from a cruise, and I'm writing about it in my article this week that comes out on Thursday. That it's interesting on a cruise that you find it very easy to talk to people that are strangers, and it's easier when you're in that closed environment to talk to people and to strike up conversations than maybe, like to go to a family wedding or something and strike up a conversation with somebody you don't know. And I think sometimes there's pressure on you, or you feel there's pressure on you to talk to somebody, like when you go to a work event, or when you go to a family event or a party, you feel obliged to speak. Whereas on a closed environment, like, I don't know, at a gym, on the cruise, in a uh, night school, something like that, a class, you don't feel obliged to talk, but you can if you want to. And also, you're talking to people that you're never going to see again. They're not going to turn up in the supermarket the following week. It's really interesting. And the reason that came to my mind was because coincidentally, I'm standing in the corridor waiting for my husband on the cruise ship. And a man just walks around the corner, stops right in front of me and says, "Hello." And he said, "Are you enjoying this cruise?" And he struck up a conversation just like that. And then he explained that he was a university lecturer and he was doing a research project on confidence,
Oh,
what it's like to travel solo as a shy person on a cruise ship.
mm,
And I thought, what are the chances of
yeah,
him stopping and talking to me? It was like meant to be. It was
fascinating.
really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think another thing in what you're saying is that we often, a lot of these parts of our life, we have a specific role for. And so you can kind of just put on a certain mask or you just slide into a certain part of the prism of who you are. There's your work self and your customer service facing self. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's your gym self and these different parts. But sometimes when you go to a party with people or your family reunion or something like that, they know so many aspects of you. And that can be, you can feel more vulnerable as a result because there's not just like one little, here we are,
Yeah.
to put it on. It's that vulnerability, the challenge of authenticity that really challenges our confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
The
guess when
is
you,
the whole me enough? Is the whole me
yeah,
okay? And welcome here.
I guess when you don't know somebody or the people that you're with, you can be anybody you want to be there and you can give off
Mhm.
any like persona. You can talk about, you can make up a story if you want to, because they're not going to know any
Mhm.
different. They're not going to say, "Well, prove it," unless
Yeah,
they
they
go
don't
and
know your
Google you or
version.
something.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. So what would you say your confidence is like now?
I think that I'm pretty confident now. I think the area where and I feel like it's a lifelong journey in some ways. I think the area where I feel the least confidence is often in my decision making, where I doubt or question myself on like, was that the right choice or not? And even that I find for me varies cyclically, like it's hormonally influenced as well.
Yeah.
But I think there's always going to be a room in the lifespan to grow, unless you're a raging narcissist and then maybe tap it down. Although even then, I think like I do believe narcissism comes from a seed of deep, deep insecurity, and so it's like that's another mask that's put way on top to
Mm.
pretend the grandiosity. So they've got a lot of work to do, actually. And in general, I would say there's always probably room for growth in this area, and I think it's one of the lovely things about Argentine seniors is they've kind of moved past um, the need to prove themselves and have found a quiet confidence that we really lack in the first few decades of life and seems to grow decade by decade, which is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think these days I feel that I'm very confident, but I know there are some instances that I'm not so confident, but again, that just makes me human. Um, and what you said about narcissists, I'm thinking about my ex-husband. I've kind
Mm,
of I when I think about him now, I realize that he was very, very insecure, which is why
mm,
he treated me. I mean, it was emotional abuse. The one before was physical abuse. He was emotional abuse. I don't know which is worse. Um, but yeah, he and I can see now he wanted to bring me down to his level when he met me because I was suffering from the previous relationship. I was his little mouse that he could look after and protect. And when I started building my confidence and becoming more confident because of the strength he was giving me, he thought, "Oh no, I'm not having that. I got to push her back down again because she's
yeah.
going to be more confident than me." And I can see that now.
His
Um,
confidence is built on being the protector or the stronger one with you than you
exactly.
and then
That.
he didn't know how to deal with
Uh,
equality.
yeah, it's that triangle, isn't it? The drama triangle. Yeah. So yeah, confidence. It's so layered and there's so many different angles to it. It's such a great subject. And I think, we all have our moments when we don't feel confident, but we've all got that inner strength that we can tap into.
Mhm.
And we're all a lot more confident than we think we are as well.
Yeah, and there's always room to grow in that and the possibility of growth in that area when you start to recognize that you are lovable and you can start to like let yourself believe that just a bit and let it begin to grow.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, it's been absolutely lovely talking to you. And I know there's been a few questions coming up. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer them, but um, if you need anything, just message either of us, and we'll respond accordingly.
Mhm. I didn't get to
Um,
see them, so I know we answered maybe one or two.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for being on. It's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah.
And is there anything you wish I'd asked you that I didn't, or do you is there anything you want to leave? Anything you want to say?
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I think just that, just let yourself believe that you're a little bit more lovable than you know. Um, if you're new to my Substack, I'd love if you joined me. Like Sue said, I write about trauma and belonging and misfits and black sheep, and that's actually the topic of my next book that is currently with my agent. So I don't know the timeline on that, but if you stay tuned, I'd love to develop this Substack relationship with you. And um, if you've been following me and you're new to Sue, please check out her Substack about the confidence journey.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And so, yeah, so we'll end here. And thank you, everybody that's been here, 27 of you. And we'll put the replay goes up automatically now. So, yeah, if you miss anything, if you came in late, then catch the replay. But thank you so much. I will speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sue. You have a good night and good day to everybody here in LA.
Thank you. Bye.
No problem.